showcase for the 7th of March 2022. I just want to acknowledge that I'm coming to you from the land of the Awabakal people, formerly known as the Newcastle tribe, and also the Mullumbimban people in Newcastle. And I wish to pay my respects to their elders, both past, present, and those emerging. And I also want to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land that you're all beaming in to us this afternoon, and pay my respects to your elders as well. And I also want to acknowledge any Indigenous people and Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people that are joining us today. And hope that that wisdom is infused in everything that we discuss today. Okay, so the first thing is just to acknowledge the apologies for today, and we have Cheryl Ann Bailey, Marie Gleeson, Glenn Dormand, Peter Sherlock, and Tim Adams. Is there anyone else that you wish to acknowledge? No, that's good.
Bob Donnelly.
Bob Donnelly, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, and Anne, you want to go through some housekeeping and Zoom etiquette for today?
Yes, look, I just thought, because we've had a change of format, we're having like the showcase sessions, like a formal meeting. It's not going to be minutes, there's not going to be, the agenda is actually going to be on the Hunter Living Histories meeting page. But I thought at the beginning of each meeting, we might just remind people to put themselves on mute, because there's, like at the moment, there's 34 of us on here. It can get quite noisy. Sometimes people forget that they're not on mute. And what happens is the camera just swings straight to that person. So someone might be in the middle of talking, and it's just one of those things that I think often people forget to put themselves on mute. To also, along the bottom of most of the Zoom pages, we have where you can put something in the chat. So if you don't want to ask a question, but you have a question that you just want to type in the chat, feel free to do that. Also, the reactions, where you can just put your hand up if you have a question. Sometimes that's easier in chairing the meeting. If you can see someone's got a hand up, you're ready to ask a question. I'll just quickly share my screen so that so the meeting page, can you see that? Yeah, good. So each month, the day or couple of days after the meeting, I'm just going to put, instead of the minutes, put a link to the recording of the session. Last month, what I did was just put the sessions, hopefully you can still see that. So you can go to whatever part of the session you're interested into, or share it with other researchers, students, academics. It's probably much easier for people that have missed the meeting or want to go back and listen to something again. If at any time someone has said something that they don't want recorded, just let me know after the meeting, and I can edit anything out. And also you can leave comments back. So as well as putting the minutes here, there's also going to be a blog post created. But instead of an agenda going out, we'll just sort of update the online program so that you can sort of have a look over with the lead up to the meetings, just to see what's on the agenda. If you've got anything you want to share, we'd like for you to actually zoom in and talk and update, or send us anything you'd like us to report back to the group. And we're going to encourage our researchers and lecturers. I know they're sort of quite busy this time of the year. It's sessions going to be like a Zoom drop-in if you've got time, very informal. Like it's always been fairly sort of informal group if people can't stay the full 2 hours. We're also going to try to streamline it to 1.5 hours. So today's just going to be a little bit of a test for that. If you've got questions, sort of, pop in the chat. or after the blog, after the meeting session has been uploaded online, like it was last month, you can always leave comments in the chat. I'll just go back to last month's meeting. So here, you can either contact me or leave messages direct in the chat, and that way the often questions that other people might be asking, and, you know, we sort of reply if it's sort of a general question. Now, I noticed someone hasn't got themselves on, and they're sort of quite noisy there in the background. If anyone is giving a presentation and they want any assistance with sharing a presentation, they can always send it to me before the meeting as well, and I can sort of share it on their behalf while they. So that's it, Johnny.
Okay, thank you very much, Anne. All right, so that's good. Just keeps all the feedback down if we're all on mute unless we wish to say something. Okay, over to Marla Scourse, the Manager of Special Collections, who is going to give us some information on the new Fraternal Societies exhibition that we're about to launch. Over to you, Marla.
Thanks, Johnny. Hello, everybody. Nice to see you today. We're very excited in Special Collections because we are about to launch our new exhibition space that we've just had installed, and we'll be kicking off this year with the physical exhibition of our Dr. Bob James Fraternal Societies collection, which we did the online exhibition of last year during COVID. So I'm just going to very quickly share my screen with you all. I'm just going to get this nice and big. So if you wanted to take a quick screenshot of this one, feel free. Otherwise, we will pop it up on the Hunter Living Histories blog tomorrow as an open invitation. But the launch will be happening on the 23rd of March from 2 p.m. at Special Collections in the Auchmuty Library at Callaghan campus. So if you want to hop along to the Hunter Living Histories blog and just RSVP through our invitation posted on there, we'd love to see you in our new exhibition space at the end of the month. Thanks, Johnny.
Thanks, Marla. All right, now for our guest speaker, who's travelled quite a distance to get here from a mysterious location, which he's not going to tell me where he's come from, but this is Warwick Schofield. Now, a number of months ago, I think we created a post with a lot of background on the quest for Explorer Sturt's underground room. So this was a fascinating sort of a topic, and we decided to put the post up to provide a lot of detailed information about it, and we've invited Warwick to come and present for you today. So over to you, Warwick. That's more like it. All right, over to you.
Try again. Oh, thanks so much, Johnny. Look, I blame Professor Richard Bush for introducing me to the Hunter Living Histories group, and it's my pleasure to give this brief presentation to you. I'm just looking at the clock already. I usually ask, do you want the short form or the long form of my presentations? And people normally request the short form. So here we go. And Johnny, thank you so much for putting all of this together and the hard work. And Anne, who's backing you up there. And it was John Fryer, who also joined us in our initial discussions on the concept of putting this presentation forward. So here I am. Whoops, I hit the wrong button already. So we're in 5 parts here. I'll give you a background to the project. I'll report to you on actual field evidence, and then I'd like you to think about some tactical issues as to where we go from here. So for 13 years, I was a science teacher with a Bachelor of Science in Earth Science at Macquarie Uni. 15 years I worked in agriculture with the Rural Training Council and the Rural Industries Research and Development Corporation. 5 years full-time opal mining, and then 10 years as an inspector of mines. So I've had a bit of outdoor experience and a certificate for in investigations, giving evidence in court and forensic photography. So maybe that qualifies me to talk a little bit about this subject. So in the 1960s, I knew the area and I talked to the University of New England about looking at Charles Sturt's underground room project. And they did develop a master's degree project, which was desktop only. We took it no further than that. And it was through Richard Bush that the Hunter Living Histories Group was recommended that we might progress the project. So this photo was taken in 1982 when a friend, Alan Newhouse, a history teacher, said, I wonder where the underground room is, because I would often camp in the area. And we went for a short walk and we said, my goodness, there it is. There it is. And there's two little kids standing in the middle of that picture, if you can see it, which gives some idea of scale. So from contemporaneous documents that we had was not much. It is mentioned, the underground room. I remember it as a school kid, but these days I think not many people are aware of it. Sturt's Journal was reprinted in 1984. Hakluyt Society brought all of that material together in excellent form, but it was not till 1975 that Daniel Brock's diary was officially published, and we were able to find a description of the underground room for the first time. We knew what it looked like. So I'll just briefly, quoting from the book that quoted Brock's diary, it had to be an underground affair. So hurrah for picks and shovels. For the spot we've chosen is as hard as baked clay and stones. It is to be 7 feet deep, 16 feet wide and 12 feet long. So there's not a bad description to get started on something we'd had no idea about for 170 years. In fact, 177 years to the present when this was dug. He went on to say, the labour of digging has been great, but 35 trees are to be sawed, some of them more than 2 feet through. There's a few exaggerations in these numbers here, but out in the desert there it must have been hard work near Tibooburra. We have laid the timber over the hole and sufficient to bear up to 500 tonnes, covered the top of the hole with brush, wood, and then mixed up mud and well plastered it, after which all the soil dug out was thrown back over the hole. I must say it is a very unique dwelling place. Now, that was as good as anyone knew, and we only knew that in 1976. And yet just recently, New England University has created a website where students can upload their projects. This one uploaded from 1968, a botanist looking at the zero plant, which is quite rare in the area, and a number of other natives, couldn't help himself but put my picture, my site, which he's called the probable site of Sturt's underground room, on a short, dry tributary of Preservation Creek. He's gone on to say the rafters to support the roof holes are still discernible, and the remains of a fireplace may be seen in the left of the excavation. Well, I couldn't believe my eyes when I saw that. That's the first ever I have found in a lot of work. We've had Jack Absalom and all the world experts on Outback New South Wales in the area have not noticed or seen the site that I believe could be it. Let's have a look at what's happened since Sturt was there in 1845, and for 6 months they lived in this room. The men were in poor physical state, and Sturt ordered their departure on December the 5th. They were told to abandon their heavy stores. Sturt himself was no longer able to even ride a horse. He had to be carried on one of their wagons. Poole, second in command, had died, and they were heading straight for Adelaide in a great hurry because their second summer was approaching and their water hole was drying up. There was no direct evidence of Aboriginal occupation in the area at all. The next European visitor could have been 1863. And even then, Cumston, in his book published in 1951, said that reports at that time said the underground room had been completely silted up. So there was nothing there. Even Burke and Wills did not go to that site, and they were 1861, and their depot was a little bit further north on Cooper Creek, which had been discovered by Sturt back 16 years earlier in 1845. Gold was discovered in the 1880s. So there's sorts of activity, not for long, but in the area after then. Photography, 1829, 1881. So what I'm saying is that site was really untouched for 16 years, at least, since Sturt abandoned his underground room, remember, with that mud and clay thrown back over the top. I'd already mentioned that Poole, second in command, had died, and that is one of the oldest famous trees of early European exploration, still there, JP 1845. carved in the grevillea right there. Sturt did say in his diary, we buried Poole near the underground room. Now, where's near mean? When you're from Adelaide and you're way up there in the desert. And this is what's led people to not really know where to look. JP 1845. It's a bit out of focus, isn't it? Looking on satellite photo, yellow line, if you can see it, I hope, at the right-hand end, circular road, which marks that James Poole burial site for his tree. And way up to your left, a kilometre away, is a straight line, which is a fault line called the Mount Poole Fault, which leads to the Rocky Glen waterhole. And on the north top side of that hole is Mount Poole Homestead, just a couple of 100 metres. And that's where the underground room site is. Sturt had 200 sheep, 15 men, carts, a boat for 8 sailors to sail the inland sea when they were eventually, hopefully, to get there. And they were another kilometre out to the right of this shot at least. And Sturt said to the men, take all your broken equipment and stuff up to the underground room where Daniel Brock will be able to repair it. And when the men returned to the main camp, Sturt said he was pleased to hear that Poole's grave had not been interfered with by the Aborigines. Well, there were probably none around anyway, but that gives also a clue that the underground room was where the site that I'm saying it is. And this is known as Preservation Creek, coming out of the mountains, which eventually out to your right in a few kilometres joins in with Everett Creek, named by Sturt after his brother. I've done thermal imaging of the site, and on Google Earth even today, in the centre of that picture is a bit of a white circle, and just touching that circle is a huge river red gum, big black mark, and the Rocky Glen waterhole is on the top side of that picture. Within 30 metres you could walk to it, and on your right, that orange spot is where you could put about 2 tents or 2 motor vehicles. You certainly couldn't put 15 men and all their tents and 4 wagons and your whole expedition. So that's why they were camped a fair way from there in a more exposed, hotter, drier area. And Depot Glen itself, quite there, those nice black rocks that Brock reported they had to hack into to make the underground room. And there's the site in 2013. We camped near there. The site's in the background of this picture. And Margie's looking at our campfire there. We picked up some, I know archaeologists love porcelain artefacts. I think that insulator from a telephone line dates around the 1880s, which makes sense with Mount Poole Station, which was set up sometime after the 1880s and was abandoned in 1829. So it's pretty harsh country there. The sawn logs, you remember from Brock's report, well, there are quite a few sawn stumps just near the underground room site, not many further out. These look pretty good. Some of these are probably chainsaw, but sawn, remember, not with an axe. How am I going for time? Not too bad. So there's Margie standing in the underground room site down the creek. A lovely diorama of the expedition is in the Tibooburra Visitor Centre, showing his 200 sheep, the whale boat, the wagons. So there's 15 men, 30 bullocks, a boat carriage, a horse dray, a spring cart, 3 drays, kangaroo dogs, sheep dogs, and so on. Daniel Brock on the right there is the collector. Just above Daniel Brock's name, you'll notice John McDowell Stewart. Does that ring a bell? Yeah. He later on actually was the first to get to the centre of Australia, north of the Springs, which he named Central Mount Sturt after his hero. Well, cartographers later thought, no, that's not right. It was Stewart that got there. So they've renamed it Central Mount Stewart. Okay, so there's a close-up of the sort of equipment, wagons and stuff that they would have had. An artist's impression of the underground room. Sturt talked about nails were falling out of the wooden boxes and everything was coming apart. Put them underground in the room. And that on the left there is poor old Poole dying his last hours being given a glass of water. Artist's impression only. That's Margie's artist's impression of the description I read to you earlier, with the dirt thrown back over the top. So our field evidence, 82, I discovered it. 2002, it was overgrown. 2013, I took some measurements. 2021, in April last year. Lovely Nevin Holland on the left, and Sean on the right, and me in the middle there with my lovely wife Margie. Went out there and did a little unofficial look around some possible sites. but we couldn't help but go back to my site. And so we proceeded to take accurate measurements. We used ranging poles. We sank an 8-inch diameter borehole in the top right-hand corner, and everything added up to what I expected. We used metal detector, we used magnets. We did fairly careful 8-inch diameter down to about 800 millimeters, and that was the end of the auger handle. We then went to 4-inch diameter, and at 930 millimeters depth, we found a horseshoe nail. We found little metal straps with nails going through them. This is in a 4-inch diameter sample only. All of this iron, look at the horseshoe nail. Everything matched up perfectly. So what is this site? Well, we found over 20 artifacts by drilling a second hole next to it. And all of this is now documented. There's the 4-inch auger. This piece, I believe, is the hub of a wagon axle. And if you've gone from Adelaide and there's no tracks or roads, I reckon the odd wagon hub would be smashed. And for some reason, they've kept it. And we even found a piece of molten iron, which they would have had a portable forge to do their repairs. Remember, way back earlier when Sturt travelled the inland rivers, he made a boat to sail down the Murrumbidgee-Darling system. This is that wheel hub. Anna's done an amazing 3D scan on it. We'll show that to you, but there's some of the material. We did a little trench. There's bottles broken. Some of the material we found. There's himself with some of the tools and gear we used. An example of a wagon hub and an axle. We don't have any list of the equipment, but we do have, dating back to the 1828-29 expeditions of Sturt, that he took things like tin pots, flour sieve, felling axes, tomahawks, hammers, handsaw, bill hooks, awls, broad hose, razors, brushes, combs, iron pots, scissors, knives. Now, this is before centre fire cartridges, so they only would have had lead shot and wads for their firearms. Nearby, the famous stone can is National Heritage listed item, as is Paul's grave tree. How am I going for time?
No, you're fine.
Racing along.
Yeah.
You know, Larry Perkins was the co-driver with Peter Brock, and Perkins has taken a bit of a lifetime retirement project looking at old explorer sites. My goodness, if he'd heard about this one, it'd be all dug up already. The one we're looking at there is over 60 years later on the Barclay expedition, and look at all the stuff he's found there out in the Simpson Desert. He loves that stuff, and it's sort of populist, you know, newspaper, Australian Geographic stuff. I want to do a bit better than that, but I'm not criticising Larry Perkins at all. But I reckon that collection of material, less the camel water tanks, would be what's still in the bottom of the room.
We're at 14 minutes.
40 minutes is up. Okay, well, we're just about there. So there's stuff about tactical issues. We're 14 kilometres from Newcastle. We're a bitumen road from Broken Hill. We can camp at Mount Paul Station or Milparinka, which is only 8 kilometres away with a hotel. Where is it? Well, it's out in the middle of nowhere in Western New South Wales. The New South Wales did a heritage, National Parks Heritage project, and they said archaeological deposits would have outstanding significance, not available from any other source, would add an important contribution to colonial history, an exceptional start if Sturt's exploration cultural history items could be found. So the chatting points is how we get through approaching this, and where to from here. I'd like the archaeology to be taken up by a university, not an amateur digger and a thrill seeker. A preliminary dig, I suggest, to confirm the site, then a formal archaeological project with a formal survey. I'd love to see that involving university students and so on. I've got a handout pack here with no one to hand it to, but that's okay. We can send it to you or collect one. And thank you very much.
Great. Thank you, Warwick. That was, look, you sped through and got right on time, which is fantastic.
I told you I would.
No, you're very good.
Three-dimensional picture of that.
Because I'm going to get all this wound up by 2:30, and I don't know how I'm going to do it. Anyway, we'll see how we go. Anne, did you want to show them the 3D?
Yeah. Yeah, I sure will. Yeah.
Anyway, so does anyone have any questions for Warwick?
That screen now.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. I'll just quickly go to the. This is what we scanned this morning. It actually
look at this.
It was quite easy to scan because it's so irregular. For some
Look at that.
reason, we got like a bit of a hole up in this section, but basically it's sort of come out okay.
Displays a kilogram. Am I online now?
Yes.
This
Yes.
kilogram or so, and a taper of 9 millimeters. The diameter of 2 inches matches perfectly what a wagon axle hub would look like. And I reckon if I was taking 4 wagons, bullock drawn, one of them with an 8-man whaleboat on it, your wheels would be tipping into gutters and bumps. So sometimes I imagine travelled at night in the moonlight would break one of those hubs. And when they were asked to take any broken equipment to the underground room, we found a lump of molten metal, which indicates they could have had a portable forge, like a 5-gallon drum with a pedal. And I mean, everything adds up. Look, this could be an old gold mine. Don't get me wrong. I thank Johnny for calling the hypothesis that it's underground room, and that's a challenge. And if an organisation, and I'd love the University of Newcastle to take it on, the Hunter Living Histories Group, this would be a significant discovery, and significant heritage items would be recovered for display and study. And I think it would be a very interesting project. Please, someone take it on.
Oh, well, you never know what will happen. As far as we're concerned, we put these information out there, and then just it's like, yeah, it's like waiting for a fish to bite. So it could be very soon, it could take months, could take years, but
yes.
At least it's there. That data is there. And the blog post that we created a few months ago is up there, and I can show you when I do my updates. Anyway, if you've got any questions, just put them in the chat and we'll relay them to Warwick. I can't see anyone wanting to ask a question. So thank you very much, Warwick.
Thank you, Johnny. That's wonderful.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Our next speaker is Georgina Woods, or George Woods. She's the National Coordinator for the Lock the Gate Alliance, and she would like to talk to us about Ravensworth Homestead. Georgina,
thanks very much. Thanks very much, Johnny, and thank you all for having me at the meeting today. Yes, my name's George. I work for Lock the Gate Alliance. I'm based here on Warramai country in Stockton, and we are at the moment supporting the Plains Clan of the Wonnarua people in their opposition to a large coal mine expansion by Glencore of their Mount Owen mine called the Glendale Continuation Project. I would expect many of you to be more familiar with all of this material than I am myself, but I'm just going to talk to you about it because the Department of Planning and Environment has completed its assessment of the Glendale Continuation Project and referred it to the Independent Planning Commission for decision. So the big issue that I wanted to talk to you about is the impact that this mine expansion will have on the Ravensworth homestead and the Ravensworth estate. And these are two distinct but related heritage impacts of the mining project. And I'm sure you all know this better than me, but the Ravensworth estate was granted to James Bowman in 1824. So one of the earliest estates in the Hunter Valley when the colonists were first here and starting to push up into the valley and create pastoral blocks. And in the mid-1820s to late 1820s, it was the location of quite a lot of frontier violence with Wonnarua people defending country and the colonists going after Wonnarua people. So there was quite a number of violent attacks that took place in that year, 1826. Culminating in an event known as the Ravensworth Massacre in September 1826, when 18 Wonnarua people were killed. So there's a lot of dispute about the precise location of the Ravensworth Massacre, but the Wonnarua Plains Clan believes that it occurred on the Ravensworth estate. At the time the massacre took place, the homestead, the current homestead, which is there now, hadn't yet been built. There was an older home that was there at that time. So, but the Heritage New South Wales described the Ravensworth estate itself in documents that we recently read that were tabled in Parliament, that Heritage New South Wales have not actually made public themselves, as an exceptionally intact cultural landscape that tells the story of shared Aboriginal and European heritage in the Hunter Valley, including early conflict, the development of pastoralism and the convict labour system. And so the other big issue, of course, as well as the Plains Clan's contention about the massacre site and their belief that the landscape of the Ravensworth estate holds unconsecrated graves of their ancestors murdered during that period. There is the homestead itself, which was built 10 years or so later by Dr. Bowman, subsequent to those violent incidents, but is thought to be an exceptionally rare example of colonial architecture. It's got it's complete with the sort of farmyard complex, so it's got a lot of intactness. It's also very rare architecturally. It's one of only 3 colonial homesteads in the state that has the H plan bungalow, and it obviously, because it was one of the earliest homesteads in the valley after colonisation, played host to a lot of very important, prominent people in the history of New South Wales. So the Heritage Council got a nomination for the Ravensworth homestead as for the State Heritage Register, and does consider it to be of state heritage significance, but has paused its consideration of that heritage nomination while this mine expansion project is being considered. Glencore, in order to go ahead with the expansion of Glendale part of the Mount Owen mine, will have to remove the homestead and take it somewhere else. At the moment, they and the department both believe that the best option to do that is to move it to the nearby Ravensworth farm. But the Heritage Council has been very clear in its advice that doing so would irreparably and catastrophically damage the heritage values, not just of the homestead itself as it sits in situ in its original location, but also of the broader Ravensworth estate, the scene of colonial violence. And the Heritage Council, in fact, made reference to the Yukon Gorge travesty in WA and this being another instance of government departments not listening to Aboriginal people in their insistence about what's important to them about their history, which is also, of course, our history here in Hunter. So I've really come today, I mean, I've got a lot of extra detail about I suppose we don't consider that the Department of Planning has done a very good job in accurately conveying to the Independent Planning Commission the importance of the Ravensworth estate and homestead, what makes them rare and exceptional, and the weighing up of losing this irreplaceable location and its meaning against, you know, just one mine expansion when we already have a great deal of mines in the Hunter, and you know, it's only going to be for 20 years, but it's sort of erasing this history that's been there for quite some time and really belongs to future generations. So we don't think the department has done a particularly accurate, unbiased and comprehensive job of presenting all of that to the Planning Commission. And the Commission, you know, is independent of the department and does take advice from people who have a passion and an understanding and expertise in the matters that are, you know, very pertinent for the minds that come to them for decision. So if anyone in this group knows this area well and these stories well, and is concerned about the loss of colonial history in the Hunter and our, you know, lost opportunity to tell these stories in a fulsome way as the landscape gets torn up, I would really appreciate it if you could, on the one hand, make a submission to the Commission, but also potentially present at the public hearing they will be holding, which will happen online at the end of next week. Their timelines are very short. They only get 12 weeks from when they receive the department's assessment report to when they have to make their decision, and they have a lot of information to process. So they rely a lot on the department's assessment of the material, which is why we're particularly concerned that the department hasn't really given them a lot of information that they had from the Plains Clan of the Wonnarua people about this site and why it's important. And so we're just really keen for people who have that information and that interest and that passion to do what they can to raise this with the Commission and make sure they hear the other side of the story.
Thanks, Georgina. So what's the deadline for submissions?
The deadline for, now I will paste in the chat a link to the project page of the Independent Planning Commission's consideration of Glendale. The deadline to register to speak at the public hearing is midday on the 14th of March, so Wednesday next week. The hearing itself will take place on the 18th of March, and the deadline for submissions is a week after that, which is the 25th of March. Now, oftentimes, if the Commission gets further information, they do reopen their submission periods, but at this point, that's the timeline we're working with.
Okay, so are there any questions for Georgina? Please shout, because I can't see any hands if there are. Doug.
Just thanks, Georgina. Appreciate it very much. Lovely to see you. I think you need to always put a plan up. Have you got a plan that you can share?
Well, hello, Doug. It's lovely to see you too. What kind of plan are you talking about?
Oh, I must mean a location plan. You know,
oh,
give
I see.
people a bit of.
You want to see the site?
Yes.
Doug, look, we've got also plans on our Ravensworth.
Yeah. All right.
Sites as well.
Doug, I can show you an image of the mine site if that's helpful. Just for a sec. And as Johnny said, there's a lot of information about this on the Hunter Living Histories webpage. So this is the Mount Owen mine, and the blue outline is the Glendale Continued Operations Project. So as you can see, Glendale, there's already a mining pit down here to the south.
Right.
This is the Ravensworth homestead here, this yellow dot. And so the mine would go up into here and mine all up through here. This over, I think someone will correct me if I'm wrong, but it's somewhere around here was the location where the sort of database, the heritage database, previously thought the Ravensworth massacre took place, or it was at least a sort of a point holder for where the massacre took place, but the location of it is not actually known and under a great deal of dispute. But yeah, it's a bit dim, I know, Doug, but that's the site plan.
Yes.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks, George. Well, look, if anyone can make a submission, please do. Look, Georgina, I just found while doing a blog post on the Buriban and Threlkeld, I found a reference to it. McGill actually informed Threlkeld about what was going on at Mr. Bowman's farm, about offences that had been committed by the mounted police. And that date is the 24th of July, 1826. So I put the whole lot up there because Threlkeld then takes issue with it and, wants them to investigate it. So the problem we've had with the site is that we did some research and we had a work, was it a placement, Anne, or?
Yeah, Victoria Gray worked with Glencore and also Tim Duddy, who's the chair of the Historic Houses Trust. Yeah,
to retrace all the colonial history of the site, and then David Shoebridge posted the 4 videos that the Wonnarua people had created. What we've got in the problem is that we've got this missing evidence in which I wish we could make public. And I've spoken to Lyndall Ryan, who's been trying to get this site officially registered, on her massacre maps as well. But there's just problems. We'd love to be able to get as much of this information out, because even while we were doing the other one with the colonial history, I heard that there was controversy over the Aboriginal history of the site, but it was very scant on the ground trying to find the information. So I wrote to David and the Wonnarua people to see if we get that material published, but I haven't had a response. They're all sort of reports. It's New South Wales State Records, but getting the transcriptions out so people can be much more aware of what actually happened helps.
Yeah, and I mean the Plains Clan has done a lot of, and I see now that Mark Dunn is on this call and he knows all of this material a great deal better than I do. So they want to say something, but the Plains Clan has done a lot of research into it and actually has an application to the Federal Environment Minister to use sections 9 and 10 of the Aboriginal Torres Strait Islander Heritage Protection Act to protect the site.
Mark, is that you? Mark's just joined us.
Oh, excellent, excellent.
That's great. So Mark, we've just been talking about where the original evidence is for this, because, you know, part of getting communities to understand these things is to sort of have the primary source materials out there. Is there a problem with the primary source materials coming out on this, or what? I don't know, because when I've made inquiries about it, it's been dumb silence on the other end. You know, it's like,
sorry, I'm just trying to turn my Frontier Violence doesn't go as well with ABC Jazz in the background.
no, it doesn't.
Listen, yeah, hi George. That was really. I'm going to have to preface this to start that I worked with the archaeologists on this site, mainly because they had downloaded and were using my PhD just in blocks. So we tried to get some clarity of what was going on. I agree with you that the mine shouldn't be expanded, and certainly the house is significant enough in a state at a state level that it shouldn't be disturbed. And if it is, the mine is claiming that they're going to be able to move it by an amazing engineering process coming out of the States, but I'm a bit sceptical that it's going to be in one piece at the end of that process. And even so, moving heritage items is never the best solution, because you completely remove them from their context, of course. Now, in terms of the massacre site, there is some contention between pretty much everyone who's involved has this in a different spot. And the Plains group certainly have it close in or on the Ravensworth estate. But the Wonnara groups are not in agreement amongst themselves either. Wonnara Aboriginal Corporation at Singleton don't have that view. So it's very difficult to know exactly what happened. Now, with the oral memory or the oral history and testimony we have from the Plains group, yeah, that has it on that site. But it should be remembered that the only evidence we've got is this inquiry that was done out of Sydney into Bowman and his cronies, for a better word. Sydney, the Attorney General, and others didn't like him at all. Now, the only written evidence we have is that the mounted police rode for 3 days and came across the group, which were then killed, which was about 18 people. None of them had been involved in the attacks on Bowman's, as it turns out, and that the mounted police left from the site of an attack on a guy called Richard Alcourt, which was the adjacent property to Ravensworth. So they don't go from Ravensworth. Now, that's not to say that there are not many incidents of attacks at Ravensworth, because there's at least 4 that I know of where people are either killed or injured. But the location of this site is difficult to, we don't know where it is, basically, full stop.
Mark, would you say that it's the contention over the location of the massacre site has in some ways masked what is a much more straightforward thing, which is this place, Ravensworth Estate, was a centre of frontier conflict. These documents that we just saw from Heritage New South Wales and Parliament said it's got the strongest documentary evidence of any conflict site across the Hunter Valley, with the trial for the murder of Jackie and, you know, all of the other things that were going on at the time. The massacre itself is very important to the Plains Clan, and I'm backing them. But at the same time, there's all this other very important stuff that makes it on its own still worth saving.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd agree with that totally. You know, I think the problem with the massacre site, well, the problem with the massacre is exactly that. It's overshadowed everything else. And I'm a real, you know, I grew up in Singleton. I know the site very well. And I know the damage that the mines have done up there. They're ruining everything. And there are many more colonial homesteads than just Ravensworth locked up on these sites. Wombo is probably as significant and has been locked away for close to 20 years. We don't even know what's happened there. So there's a lot of them it's an issue. The massacre, I think I'm speaking to the converted. These issues are very sensitive and difficult, but really we've got to get to the truth of them. And I think this massacre is now being used by both sides as like a chess piece, and it's making it more obscure about what actually happened up there than needs be. And there should be some truth telling about what the massacre was, because some people are still saying it never happened anyway. And if we can find out where it is, all the better. But I think Ravensworth Homestead is significant in its own right. The funny thing is as well, I suppose, if you move it, you're ruining not only that Aboriginal landscape, but the cultural landscape of the Hunter Valley as well, which is an important place. So, yeah, it's difficult. I think people should put in submissions to the Planning Commission. I know the Heritage Council's in a bind, essentially, because they did studies on Hunter Valley homesteads to see what should be listed on the SHR, and this is one of them, as you already know, because you just said that. But they're like all the government agencies that are trying to do things useful, like heritage and environment, they're extremely understaffed, and they have to make decisions about what battles to fight and which ones they can't. And I'm afraid that Ravensworth is going to fall into that one. But you know, stranger things have happened in the heritage world, and with mines. Sometimes they go ahead with their projects and then never put a spade in the ground, hopefully. But, you know.
All right. Well, look, thank you very much, Mark and Georgina. Look, I think we should make a submission on this, just simply that you shouldn't tamper with a crime scene, basically. So, you know, until we know for sure, I think it's something that should be looked after.
Yeah,
because I mean, look, I'm not familiar with the Aboriginal history of that area, but the thing is, if something's going to chew the landscape up, we're never going to know. And having the documentary evidence is only half the story. You need the physical evidence. Now, Sarah asked the question, has there been any human remains found or on the site, or any archaeological investigations of these massacres at all, Mark, that you know of, or no?
My understanding is no, there's no human remains found on the site. There was a search on another adjacent mine site that they thought they had a grave, and it turned out not to be.
Okay.
And listen, the problem with archaeology, Sarah, is that it is driven by development, and if developers don't want it to go ahead, in this case, the mine, it's not going to happen.
Yeah, there's no public archaeology.
The house site and of the old house site, which they couldn't find. But in terms of a massacre, I mean, yeah, you're looking at 20,000 acres of land up there. So they're not going to do, essentially they won't do anything unless something comes up in the ground.
Yeah. All right. So if you feel strongly about these things, make a submission, even if it's about from the point of view that we don't know enough about it, and we should know. We should know a bit more about it. And the other point of view is that there's another history within the landowners in this area, which we're really hoping to try and open up that discussion as well, because you don't know what's held in family archives and private collections that are not coming out because of the sensitivities around all this. And if we want to get to the heart of what's ailing us, I think we need to do it. Anyway, thank you very much.
Johnny, can I just say one more thing? Because
Yeah,
the
sure.
submissions are wonderful and very important, but I would also love it if people feel moved by this, for them to actually speak at the hearing. You can just have a little 5-minute slot. You don't have to be an expert on it. I personally find I'm not a heritage expert, but I find the whole story really very evocative, and we'll be talking about how important it is to me as someone who grew up in the Hunter.
Well, there's all sorts of stuff being bulldozed out there. They're in the line of boratories. And I mean, even if we wanted to try and find out where these sites were, we can't even go to them anymore because they're just demolished.
Yeah.
You know? So it's...
So yes, sorry for taking the floor again, but yeah, speak at the public hearing if you at all can. That would be great.
Something near to my heart, but I'm not going to make this meeting by 2:30. I'll tell you now. Sorry, Marla. Anyway, but thank you very much. And please, yes, if you do feel inclined to make a submission towards this, because I mean, there's so much we don't know about the site. As I said, we're finding references in Threlkeld, things that I've been sitting there looking at for years, and all of a sudden they just pop out at you. So, you know, I think it's something that needs more investigation. But from our point of view, I love being able to put things out into the public domain. So if you're sitting on documents or evidential things that can be put out there, then it's, you know, it's great if this stuff can be put out there, or else we're just ignorant about the whole lot, and we can't. The more eyes look at this thing, the more, you know, interesting connections that can be made about these sites. So thank you very much for raising it, Georgina. At least it, you know, puts the wind up us to do something. All right, great. Our next speaker is Hilary Oliver, who will take us now out of this world into the world of opera, and Florence Austral. Over to you.
Well, thank you very much, first of all, for inviting me here. And I'm on the land of the Awabakal people. And we have to now take a big gear change from Sturt and Lock the Gate to something that is really dear to my heart. It's about Florence Austral, who was the most amazing, famous opera singer, who lived the last 18 years of her life in Newcastle. Now, maybe a lot of you have never heard of her. However, that doesn't matter because it happens. People get forgotten. She made 102 recordings with HMV. So that gives you an idea of how famous she really was. She sang many times at the Royal Opera House, Covent Garden, Royal Albert Hall, Crystal Palace. She sang all around the world, and she became the most sought after Wagnerian opera singer and soprano in the 1920s. She came to Newcastle in 1952 at the beginning of the Conservatorium. Now, I've been researching her life and career for a little while now, and my aim is to prepare a proposal to the Newcastle Museum for an exhibition in honour of all the 11 teachers who taught at the establishment of the Newcastle Conservatorium. Many had wonderful careers and interesting lives. The proposal could also include the former Sydney Conservatorium director, Eugene Goossens, as the Newcastle Conservatorium was a branch of the Sydney Con before it became a faculty of the Newcastle University. The Florence Austral Society, Inc., that's me and some friends and colleagues and people who've studied with Florence, would like to invite students or researchers to assist in locating memorabilia and/or valuable information to be included in the proposal about the 11 teachers. This could assist the students who are studying for a research specialisation in their postgraduate degree. So if they could start researching and, we could, collate all this information, it would be quite a remarkable exhibition. We also need to research archive material located in the UK performance-related collections. There would certainly be costume props located in storage facilities, which would include helmets and spears from the Wagnerian operas that Austral would have worn on stage. Her actual material clothing, that'd be gone, but the helmets, the spears, the shields, they would still be there somewhere. We require assistance in preparing the proposal, which would be watertight and exciting for the museum and the Newcastle City Council. They would receive accolades and it would encourage visitors to the city. Come and see this exhibition, it'd be fabulous. The cost of the research and preparation of a collection would be significant. And maybe the students and researchers could write submissions to major companies for financial support. This is because I can hear the Newcastle Council and the museum pulling tissues out of the box and sobbing, saying we haven't got any money. So we really do need to make applications to council grants, offers for the people of money who love opera. And the proposal would include visual and sound with the assistance of a technician, and Claire Presser has put up her hand. And the last thing is that Dr. Helen English has finally contacted me, and I'm very excited about that because she would give great assistance towards the Florence Austral Society. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Yeah, that's brilliant. All right. Any questions for Hilary? Just shout, because I can't see you all individually. So. Okay, I take the silence as that you're fine. Thank you very much, Hilary. Yes. Okay,
Good.
Dr. Jude Conway on the Newcastle Women's Movement, and congratulations on being a doctor.
Thank you, Johnny. Hang on, sorry, my phone's gone crazy. This isn't a talk per se, this is just a couple of minutes. I'll talk about my thesis on the Newcastle women's movement another time and give you slides. So a blog went out today mentioning Anne had designated women's history as fringe history. So I did say, well, things are changing. Most historians now make an effort to include women in any histories. And certainly there's been 2 histories published on Hunter Living Histories in the last couple of weeks to supplement what we know about women in Newcastle and the Hunter region. And now my thesis is on the women's movement from the 1970s and all through the 1980s. And it also, Newcastle is an important character in my thesis. So anyone, would like to see my view of what Newcastle was like in the 1970s and 80s. For example, we had a lower than New South Wales average percentage of migrant population. And I look at, what was the difference between male and female education. So that's sort of the context of Newcastle. And then I look at using my mother's archives and notes about her activism. I use that as a jumping off point I look at the process of the women's movement and activism and where the ideas came from and how they reached Newcastle. And then what happened is how things spread out from... Sam, Dad, can you be quiet, please? Sorry, I can just see Sam Dad's screen now. So it's been hailed by one of the examiners as the first important study of regional feminism, regional second wave women's movement in Australia. And I look at women's electoral lobby, violence against women, employment issues, which I really had to, I had enough in the employment issues for a whole thesis. There's so many issues in employment. And of course, one of the most distinctive for Newcastle was women working in the steel industry. And I have got an article coming out about that soon in the Labour History Journal. And I end the thesis with a chapter on the creativity that was a prime part of the Newcastle women's movement and all women's movements, from theatre, women's theatre, posters, artworks, songs, music. So, it's really, it's jam-packed. There's lots of images for people to look at, original images, original maps. It's worth a look. And you can get onto the website through the blog on the Hunter Living Histories. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jude. Great. All right. So any questions for Jude about any of that? We actually do have a category page on women's histories on the Hunter Living Histories, so you're quite welcome to partake in that. Jude's done a few articles, and I'm sure that there'll be many more to come. So thank you very much. All right, Samantha, are you with us now?
Can everyone hear me now? Oh, so terrible. I'm sorry about that mix up.
It's okay. It'll all be edited out.
Oh, good. So I'm here today to talk about the Power to the People exhibition that's currently on at the Lovett Gallery in the library. The exhibition's on until April 14th. But first I'll just briefly introduce myself because I haven't met a lot of you people. So my name's Sam. I work for Hunter Workers, the Newcastle Trades Hall Council, which is the peak union organisation in the region. And I've been working with Hunter Workers since 2018, helping develop a labour library. And part of that involves doing research for the organisation because there's a huge disconnect between a lot of our history, which has occurred partly because of the collapse of the Workers' Club where the Trades Hall Council was originally housed, and a lot of the information was lost and artefacts were lost during the collapse. And also it's just a general problem with the labour movement and labour history that it's all about the moment, and artefacts get abandoned at the end of a campaign, basically. So I was invited to become involved with the Power to the People exhibition in late December. So the exhibition itself is an exhibition that was opened last year in Sydney, and it's celebrating the work of Jack Mundy and the New South Wales Builders Labourers Federation and their green ban activism that occurred in the 70s. So for anyone who's not aware, a green ban is a type of industrial action that was pretty much developed by the New South Wales BLF. And it's an industrial action that is of no immediate benefit to workers or unionists, but instead it's geared towards striking to preserve a natural environment or local architecture, anything that's considered of crucial importance to the community overall. So the most famous actions were in Sydney in terms of saving the rocks and saving Kelly's Bush in the 70s. So that's the dominant part of the exhibition. The exhibition has been curated by Joe Holder of the Cross Arts Project, which is gallery in Potts Point, and with Neil Towett at Sydney Trades Hall. So that exhibition was presented at Sydney Trades Hall last year, and it has travelled up here for this year. And the goal with part of the goal with this exhibition was to include a section on the local green ban activities that have occurred. So I was engaged to do research because the Newcastle Trades Hall Council was integrally involved as a point of contact for community groups to bring any environmental or socio-cultural issues that were happening in their local community. And as a point, they were also that main point of contact with the local labour movement as well, and were experienced at orchestrating industrial action and negotiating with developers or local or state council, who were often the main counterpoint to discuss with. Sorry, I'm just going to consult my notes. So the exhibition itself opened on the 25th of February, which was a great night. It was pretty well attended. Judy Mundy, who was a lawyer and feminist activist and a communist activist, and also Jack Mundy's wife, opened the exhibition, and Lee Shears, the Secretary of Newcastle Trades Hall Council, now known as Hunter Workers, also spoke. Okay, so on to the Newcastle Green Ban activity. Basically, my research for the exhibition, I had 2 months to barely scratch the surface on the local green ban activity, which I know some of you were very much involved in, such as Doug Lithgow. So coming into the exhibition and the research for that, there was really 2 major actions in the 70s that were very prominent up here. One of them was the efforts to save Black Butt Reserve from decimation by the motorway 23. So there were a number of community groups involved, obviously the Northern Parks and Playground movement and the Save Blackbutt Action Committee. And then the other main action from the 70s was the efforts to save a lot of the historic architecture and shape the redevelopment of East End, fighting high-rise development. But in terms of what I discovered when I started researching that is that there was at least 15 other green bans that were implemented in Newcastle from the late 60s heading on well into the early 90s, which is there doesn't seem to be a huge recorded history at this point. There's no central information. The history is just existing in people's memories still, in artifacts that seem to be dispersed through people's personal collections. So I was putting together the history basically from reading the Newcastle Trades Hall Council minutes from these periods, and also going back through newspaper clippings. So the scope of the green ban activity up here was essential. It was very broad. So there was lots of different environmental activism to save national park areas from sale to mining concerns, efforts to save local green spaces in the form of parks that were often threatened by highways or other types of development. There was also the efforts to save vulnerable communities, and particularly with emphasis on preserving inner city areas for working class and lower income families to be able to remain in the city as the city was gentrified. And by the 1980s, the Trades Hall Council had progressed and expanded the green ban purvey into actually becoming deeply involved in planning and shaping the development of a lot of the inner city areas, in particular Carrington, Wickham, Honeysuckle, and yet again the continuation of the East End development in terms of Foreshore Park and the community housing that was built up there. So I guess what I would like to finally say about the green ban of the Power to the People exhibition is it's a really interesting point of activist history to go and have a look at if you're interested in what was happening in Sydney at the time, and it's a very good focal point to start the discussion again about what was happening up here. It's a crucial part of our history that has deeply shaped what we recognise as Newcastle and the surrounding areas today, not just in terms of the local architecture and the environment that we're interacting in, but also in preserving a lot of the natural habitat and protecting that for perpetuity. But as I said, the research for the exhibition just barely scratches the surface. So I'm looking at extending that research and trying to get a central history of that activity together. And if anybody has any artifacts or information to share or any further things, I would love it if you could get in contact with me.
That's great, Samantha. That's wonderful. Well, we've got the Trades Hall records here going back, so I'm sure that there'll be something.
I have certainly spent a bit of time in them.
When we made inquiries about this when they first came through, and the impression that we got from our informants was that there was not much green ban action up here. So it's quite interesting that you've been able to find evidence of these things. So yeah, it would be great to get it out into the public domain.
Yeah.
Does anyone have any quick questions for Samantha before we move on? Again, just shout out.
Well, you know, I'm one of the only ones that's still alive, I suppose. But I do remember the green ban. The green ban, very important in Sydney. It developed the feeling for it, and the Trades Hall were always very active in planning. Right? You know, they had the ecology centre there, and Bob Burger was very much involved, and he was with the Newcastle, with the university.
Yeah.
There were, but you know, the things, the history. I've got a little potted history of the Black Butt matter, but you know, the thing is, yeah, there is a story to be told. There's no doubt about that. And there were a lot of people involved. But I'm just wondering, did anyone ever come across Julia Hayes? Julia Hayes was the first one to really take up the things. And Julia Hayes was working with the WEA in the days that I remember, which was just across from the Trades Hall, I might say. And in those days, but Julia Hayes and Wendy Saffield, they're two really important women.
Sorry, what was Wendy's surname?
What was
Wendy's surname?
Wendy Salfield.
How do you spell that?
Oh, I think it's Salfield.
Okay, thank you.
But she did work with the Newcastle Uni. She was working there with the I'm not sure what department really, but look, there's a whole. It was really important the way the Trades Hall mainly operated as an umbrella movement for residents groups to ensure that they were actually heard. See, up till Wendy Saffield, you could go along to a council meeting, for instance, and you could sit there and you wouldn't know what the hell they were talking about, because there was no public material available, and they were the first ones to make sure that at least Newcastle Council, to start with, and I imagine I'm not sure that it is written into the Local Government Act now, but 93. But the thing is, that was the real start of public discussion of council matters. Before that, it was just a closed book between developers and the councillors, or in those days they were aldermen, of course.
Anyway,
I'll leave it at that.
Thank you very much.
I'd love to catch up with you sometime.
Yeah.
Yes, I would love to speak with you too, Doug.
Yes. Thanks, Samantha. Okay, so before we move on to the latest updates that we've been creating, does anyone have any news from the groups that they wish to share?
Yeah. I'm not quite sure if any of you are aware of the clothing museum's doing an exposition on the 2nd of April at the hall where they are at High Street. It's going to be from the 40s to 70s, and we're starting that. And
Sarah, what's this? Who's organising the exhibition?
From the Clothing Museum.
Okay.
Yeah. So that one's at I think you can find them on Facebook. I think they sent you a copy of it. I think you shared it.
Yeah, they did, Sarah. I'm just trying to find it online. I'll pop it in the
link. I probably should have found the copy of the brochure. But that one on the 2nd of April, if you're into vintage clothing, we've put out a couple of pieces to join our photo booth.
all my clothing is vintage, I just can't, buy new stuff. So
Hey, well, I think we're doing competitions for the best vintage dress.
yes, that's very good.
Yeah.
Actually, that museum's also got a connection with Florence Austral.
Oh, it does?
Yeah, they hold a few pieces of Florence Austral.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, we will have to go find it. It is. I'm not quite sure if you've been down there. It kind of got dumped between their move and COVID. So I did have a fun explore around last Wednesday around vintage hats, and this really good one was, of course, everything in archives. We went through what we thought was a box of suits. First thing that comes out is a 50s wedding dress and a bridesmaid's dress.
So where is this held? Is this in Sydney or here?
No, in Maitland.
Maitland, okay.
Yeah, we're in the church next to the church hall, next to the All Saints College.
Okay.
We're in there. They're in there. So I think Anne has Sandra's number, who is the president of it.
Yep, and the link's gone up. So thank you very much, Sarah.
Pop that in the chat.
Yeah.
All right, any other updates?
Johnny,
yeah.
Can I just mention, look, it was good to see Tim Krakenthorpe on the program last month talk about how the Wickham School of Arts building has been saved.
Yep.
The issue is not, however, done and dusted, because we don't know what's going to be happening to the land immediately surrounding it. And so some developer presumably is going to buy that site, and we could end up with an 8-story, 16-story tower block right next to it. The National Trust in Newcastle will be lobbying to try and prevent that from happening. All we're asking is that a bit of land be left around the building, but there's no guarantee that that will happen.
Okay. Are you writing to Tim about these things, or?
Yes, we will be in touch with him again. Yes.
Okay.
And also in touch with Newcastle Council.
All right. Okay. Thank you, Ross. Any other updates? Okay, Robert.
I'm just going to share my screen. And can you see that?
Yes.
Okay, so this is the snowball picture from up near the obelisk, taken in 1906 with that extra little piece from the guy down in Melbourne on the left-hand side. But I got in touch with a local drone photographer, David Diem, and said to him that I can't get above the trees. Can he just get in his drone and go up 15 meters, which he did, and he's taken this modern picture the other day.
Fantastic, Robert.
So he's lined up Mount Sugarloaf and Black Hill and the Tower of, is that St. Andrews in the corner of Civic Park?
Yes.
So he's lined those three up. And he actually said that that he took this 15 meters above Lemnos Parade. And he said, if we know anyone who lives in Lemnos Parade, that he can get into their property and get up onto their house, he can probably get it close to where Snowball actually took it.
Wow.
So I don't know. I might go out on Twitter and see if we can find someone that lives in Lemnos Parade.
Okay.
Because the drone doesn't have quite the clarity. The drone is good, but it doesn't have the clarity of glass negatives.
It doesn't have the pixels.
That's right. But I'll send that in to you. And
well, all you need is a drone to take a glass negative camera up into the sky.
Yes, that's right. Yes. But I'll send that in, and that can go with the other thing.
That's wonderful. Look, we should get that drone done for the also for the Ray panorama too, because I remember years ago when we tried to get Alan Chawner to do a before and after shot of the 1849 panorama, he couldn't get over the top of the roofs either. So drones might be able to actually solve this problem for us now. So
yes,
once the resolution
okay,
it's a little bit okay. Kerry from the City of Newcastle.
Well, my husband just bought himself a new drone, so I'll have a look at it.
Okay.
He's still learning how to drive it. It's a bit
Okay.
scary, quite frankly.
Hmm.
I just wanted to share, we recently had back 2,000 negatives that have from the Newcastle Morning Herald that have not been seen before, digitized. Unfortunately, and I'll just put the link into chat rather than trying to share my screen. Unfortunately, there's about 500 of them that I literally have no details for whatsoever. So I've had to catalogue them as, you know, 3 men in suits in a bar and ladies modelling on the beach. And I would really, really like some help with trying to identify some of the people. Now, as most of you know, I've only been in Newcastle about 4 years, so I don't know your previous councillors by sight, but some of you do. So I was just going to share it. If you click on that link that I've put in the chat, it should take you to the recently added tab on our online collections. And you'll see pretty quickly the ones that I don't have a lot of detail for. There are 2,000 listed there, so feel free. But if anyone's got, you know, a spare couple of hours and they feel like sending me the accession number and a title of what it should actually be, then please feel free.
Kerry, are you able to just check that link again? Because I've clicked
It's
on
not
it and it's
working?
taking me through to a blank page.
Yeah, it does. If you scroll
Yeah, same
down,
here.
if you scroll down, they start to populate.
Oh, okay, great.
Yeah,
They only
Thank you.
start
There we go.
There are a lot
So,
of
Kerry,
them
is this
there.
a new collection of images, or is it something that's been in there for a while?
No, I put these up 2 weeks ago.
Okay.
So it's 2,000 negatives from the Newcastle Morning Herald that we had digitized over the shutdown last year. And
So
there
have
may
they?
be some double ups with other images from the Herald that are similar.
Yeah.
But as none of these have seen the light of day
Oh,
before.
that's fantastic. They look great.
Yeah.
So,
Yep.
okay. Well, wonderful. All right. Yeah. Well, I'm sure you'll have a lot of people gazing into those and sending through comments.
I'd just rather you guys looked at them than I put it on Facebook, because that could turn into a bit of a complication. So
Okay.
yeah, have a look. And if
All right.
anybody
That's
has some
great.
suggestions, let me know.
Good.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for that update, Kerry. All right. Any more? Anne, did you want to run people through some of the latest updates on the blog for yourself?
Oh yeah, look, there's not too many. The one Jude's already spoken about. I'll just quickly share my screen. What Jude spoke about was a publication on Jenny's Place, which is the
I'll share my screen instead.
Oh, look, thanks for that. Yeah. So Jenny's Place is based up in Maitland, but yeah, it commemorates a history and anniversary in September. And we put an online version of the history of that organisation. And we've got work integrated learning student with us, Oliver Salmons. I think Oliver is at this meeting. So it's really great to have students, and we've got some of our volunteers restarted as well. So Oliver, he's working on updating the oral history program that we had some steps and processes on the old cultural collections blog post. So he's working on updating that, making sure all the links are working, and just some more sort of relevant and revised information about how to conduct an oral history. So he's also going to work with us on a few oral histories we're going to do with community members over the next few months. We had an ABC history segment about 2 weeks ago. So that might be a monthly occurrence where we choose a photo from special collections, and we just talk about the context of the photograph. And, you know, often we also get like information back from the community once we've sort of, you know, showcased it on our social media accounts. And the other, still encourage people to look at each month's Fringe Histories theme. Like Jude was saying, she's sort of done one. We're going to promote like the next month is sort of commemorating the LGBTQ queer community and history and societies around Newcastle and the Hunter region. So that's on the blog post if you want sort of more details about the length of a blog post, or if you know anyone that's sort of doing research locally or using some of our special collections, encourage them to submit something to us. And I think that's about it, Gioni.
Okay, thank you, Anne. And this was Oliver's first plan that he did, Newcastle in 1874. So that's a original engraving that the library acquired late last year. Is that correct, Marla? And we took it downstairs and we scanned it. And currently I sent the high-res gig version of this to Dave Cypher in Maitland, who's going to zhuzh it for us. Okay, so, but this is a Calvert engraving. You can see his signature down here. And this guy was an absolute master craftsman when it came to these things. There he is there. Now, David is a big fan of his because he did another engraving of Maitland in 1878, which is absolutely brilliant. And so he just adored seeing this today. So that's the, so we've had access to this before. It's an odd one because it says here that it was published in the Illustrated Australian News. And we know that these engravings were usually published in the Illustrated Sydney News. Now, the weird thing is that when I tracked this thing down, it was finally published on the 3rd of November, 1875. But the key to it, which is this thing here, which you can see, can't you, was published in the Illustrated Sydney News in April of 1875. So, but when I went and checked the actual Trove entry for this in the supplement section, there was no engraving. And when I tried to scan this off the microfilm, there was no microfilm version either. So we finally did track down the Illustrated Sydney News article. This was a front page of the edition. They did a big section on Newcastle. And then to find the actual engraving, you had to go back to the Illustrated Sydney News to see their version. Now you'll see the coal staves here. So they're the engraved versions of these things. And I remember I got these wrong, and the late Russell Rigby corrected me and created one of the best presentations on these coal staves, because there were government coal staves as well as the AA company. And if you want to see photographs of the actual ones from the 1870s, then consult this set of images that Anne Glennie sent through to us from her family archive. So you can see how thick those timbers were. So we've got photographic as well as artistic evidence, and you can see all the transcriptions of the detail there. Okay, so thank you, Ollie, and that's that particular post. So as we've been getting these recent acquisitions, we've been putting them up online. So David Dial, OAM, donated some papers of Alison Douglas Adam, who was a Newcastle Naval Brigade. Now, this took us years because John Fryer's wife was kindly transcribing a notebook of his that was completely in shorthand. And we finally got them up online as well. So the entire archive of this gentleman, who was basically a writer on Australia's first military encounter in German Papua, is up online. And as you can see, this is the shorthand notebook, and it's all available now online to consult, including the transcription, which lies at the end. Okay, and so the whole narrative of the expedition, the confidential reports, government gazettes, his own take on on the whole capture of German New Guinea. This is in 1914. And David has also provided his transcriptions as well for that. So thank you very much. David, is there anything you want to say about this?
I think you covered it all, Johnny.
Okay.
Thanks very much for doing that.
Well, I'm sorry, I only got remembered. They reminded on this to-do list on last month's discussion about the Endeavour, and Peter Hobens reminded me about the AE1 and the AE2, and I thought, oh yes, the submarine. So there were companion submarines here. So I then thought, oh my God, I've got all this material that we've still got on the to-do list. So the entire album has gone up of all the photographs. So it's an incredible documentary archive about that first engagement, including the maps, which we were able to digitize as well. So that's the detail. And so I'm just glad. Sorry, David, it's taken, longer than World War I to get it up there, but, anyway, it's there.
Thank you.
And the other thing that we've been working on, which has been another labour of love, have been the lives and language work of Biriban and Threlkeld. So this is a companion blog to the movie that's currently in production at the moment. Now, Glenn was going to give us an update today, but he's had to go and visit his mum in Queensland. But there's a lot of work going on here at the moment. And basically, this is the first time we've brought together everything that these two men worked on when it came to recording the language of this area in chronological order, everything that we've been able to find in archives, in libraries, in Gunson's work. I'm just sort of putting everything up there as it sits, but also dissecting it and adding it in chronological order so that you can see where everything lies, and as they were working on the language, and as well as the context around it, and details on the family that we're slowly uncovering as we go through. So this is for both men. I've also brought together material that Threlkeld's great-great-granddaughter sent to me a number of years ago. That's all been incorporated, material that's come from the reports, as well as art, as well as material that we have in our collections as well. So it's I don't think it's going to be finished, but it's a pretty big chunk there. When the film finally comes out, this will be the companion, so that if people want to learn more about the language study and actually see the original drafts and attempts at recording the language of this area, that they can actually go and see the original materials. All right. And there's the Newcastle Women's Movement. That's the latest one that we put up. And I've got a question for you, because this one is the BHP Steelworks site. It was acquired from Ross last year, along with a number of things. But what mystifies me is Muncaster's house. And Robert, this might be another one for you, because there is a connection to the Lambton Colliery, because I think this fella was either Thomas Muncaster, who was the shipping manager with the Lambton Colliery or the Scottish Australian Mining Company, or perhaps another Muncaster that was a farmer on Debsey Island. I don't know whether they were two different people or they're the same person. Anyway, if anyone can shed light on him, that would be interesting. But apart from that, it's a wonderful early landscape of basically the proto steelworks before it came to be there, as well as the botanical gardens, and also the Mayfield East Public School, which is in the corner of that engraving. All right, so plenty of new resources up online for you to enjoy relating to our region, and there you are. So I shall stop sharing. It's 2:39. Yes.
At the fort, we have a very large print of most of that etching of Newcastle. It's about 2.5 metres by about 1.5 metres, with the legend and so on, which you kindly allowed us to use when we were putting it up. Unfortunately, we trod on Peter Morris's toes because he was wanting to put it up on the museum, but ours went up first.
Oh, well. Well, look, this is
it's on the external wall of the Commandant's Cottage.
Oh, that's great, because there's another one that we've recently purchased, which again, it's from these Illustrated Sydney News. If we can get our hands on really good quality originals, the scans are just going to blow us away, because that Newcastle in 1875 has been reprinted as a number of times, but the poster prints were from the 1970s and just didn't cut it. The microfilm doesn't cut it either. So it was just great having access to an original scan. And when David is finished with it, it's going to look absolutely amazing. So we'll put it up as well. But yes, there was another one that was tracked down in the catalogue just a few weeks ago, and it's another one of these Illustrated Sydney News engravings. They're absolute masterpieces, and if we can, but the problem is that the paper that they were printed on is so full of acids that it's very, very hard to find an intact copy still around today. So if we can find one, they're worth their weight in gold. And David is very particular about the actual art of engraving, and he says that the Maitland one is just amazing in terms of the detail that they fitted. I mean, this is the side of advertisements on the side of buildings that are about this big, and you can read the advertisement completely. There's no botching or anything. The accuracy to detail was extraordinary. So keep an eye on that. We'll send them out as we go. So look, I was supposed to end at 2:30. It's 2:41. I think we've done an okay job. Maybe a B+. What do you reckon, Marwa?
No one's fallen asleep, so I think we're doing well.
Look, the problem is that I got scolded because 2 hours is just ridiculous to keep people at a meeting for. I hate 2-hour meetings myself. So I said, but they don't seem to complain. They keep us after the 3 hours. So anyway, we're going to try and keep the meetings a bit more shorter. Okay. But sometimes it's just riveting, as you could see with the Ravensworth discussion. I could have kept going on with that, but you know, some of the topics are just a bit too fascinating to leave. So anyway, I just want to thank all our presenters for today. Warwick, who's travelled so far, I wish you all the best. I hope
thanks, Johnny,
that there's a wonderful team that comes together and all that sort of stuff. Don't forget Georgina's plea to be involved, because I think there's a lot of unfinished business with Aboriginal history in the Valley, and if the mining company's going to chew it up, we're not going to know anything about it. So I think we need to make submissions on that. Hilary, Samantha, Jude, and everyone for coming, thank you very much, and we'll see you next month. Okay.